Mhm. Hi, everyone. We're live with NIO and SGX today. You're with me, Olivia Higgins. It's always a pleasure having you on our webinars. And today we're talking about going global in the smart EV market with NIO's SGX listing. Now, NIO is a pioneer and a leading company in the premium smart EV market and is now listed on the SGX. So this would be the third exchange that NIO shares are trading on after the New York Stock Exchange and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And being in Singapore is a unique move. So today we're going to find out during this live session about NIO's future expansion plans and how SGX is supporting that. Now, as Singapore transitions with its green plan for 2030, I think it's a hot topic at the moment, and some might say it comes at the right time. So let's find out what the opportunities are for today. Now, just a reminder that this webinar is for educational purposes, and we're here with Mumu to help you learn and continue to grow and expand as a bridge to key experts and analysis to help you make better investment decisions. So get your notes ready and be a part of the discussion, because we'll have a live Q&A where we're giving out free NIO shares, but you've got to answer certain questions and get it right. So we're excited for that. Be a part of the discussion, all right? So introducing our guests for today, we've got the Chief Financial Officer, Stephen Feng, and he is here with us with Chia Caihan, who is the Chief Representative of the SGX Beijing Representative Office, and they're with us today. Hi, Stephen, and hi, Caihan. How are you doing?
Hi, Olivia. Thank you for inviting me to join this seminar. I was first very excited today to land on Singapore Exchange. And also personally, I like Singapore, this country, very much. And hopefully we will have more chances to visit Singapore in the future and have more and more business in Singapore.
We're excited to welcome you back, and we're looking forward to the type of analysis and discussions we're about to have for this webinar. Now, Caihan, you're joining us from Beijing. How are you doing over there?
All good. China's taking very good care of me, and therefore I'll be taking very good care of the Chinese companies of Singapore.
Excellent. Thank you. So today, for the audience members watching out there, we're going to go through what to expect from the NIO listing on SGX. We will analyze NIO's development strategy and investment opportunities in the EV market, key features of the Singapore EV market and plans after the Singapore IPO, and at the end, the live Q&A with our giveaway. Now, let's begin and fire away for the core question. I've got a question for Caihan. So why is it important to pay attention to the value of Chinese companies listing in Singapore? Why now?
Why now? I guess the reason is a very simple one. The ones that we have listed here are getting more interesting, coming from more exciting industries. Of course, I believe the market can feel how we, the team at SGX, has been very focused on bringing this very valuable Asian brands to be closer to our market players and also our investors. There are some sectors which, in my view, bring along with them a natural following. So this may start with a consumer following, evolving into investor following. And this following actually translates into a brand value. In my view, which should bring sustenance to market activity And NIO is a very good example, an excellent example of this value which we have successfully brought to the Singapore market. It belongs to a very much appreciated sector, the sustainability sector, and has a very strong brand following, very strong service-oriented mindset that places it very well before all its stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
Then NIO, of course, much earlier on, we have also brought in some other Chinese companies. We had a Chinese media company that was previously listed, GHY Culture and Media, content-driven, concert production, and it's not unfamiliar to the public. So we'll see more of these going forward, and we'll continuously to keep the market very rejuvenated through the introduction of companies that are reflective of the innovative and creative culture in China. And also with the business plans that these companies have in this part of the world, it is even clearer that these companies have planted their listing here so as to support their longer term strategies and growth plans. Listing is only, I would say, one of the checkpoints in the company's developmental history, and Singapore is now on their growth map to the next one of success. So investors should make use of this opportunity to be involved and also to learn about the many up and coming industries, new sectors, which they probably have limited access to in the past.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I've got a question for Stephen. So I understand that it listed today, right, in the Singapore Stock Exchange. So I'm wondering, what are your views on that today, and what's the sentiment so far?
Obviously, the sentiment, of course, is very good. We're very happy and excited. But back to the idea to get listed in Singapore Exchange, I would say the first thought is very simple. We would like to put our shareholders' interest. We would like to behave in the best interest of our shareholders. And then when we look at Singapore, it's a well-established global hub for trade, for commerce, but also we believe it's a global hub for capital market and for innovation. So that's why first we want to attract more Asia-based investors and the retail investors from this platform, and also actually to be listed in Singapore Exchange enable us to offer more around-the-clock trading time window and also more liquidity for our shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
So,
great. So Caihan, so what is SGX position then in the international capital market, extending from that point? As
okay, SGX has a very unique position, I must say. Very unbiased one. It is very open to investors of all walks, whether it's institution or retail, west or the east. They'll find great ease in investing in a market like Singapore. Also, in terms of SGX's multi-asset positioning, we make ourselves an exchange that is able to offer a very wide range of instruments, financial instruments, catering to investors or even risk managers, hedgers alike. Are also very strongly aligned to favored market concepts, be it sustainability, internationalization, and that puts us in a very good place to interact with investors looking for investments. And these investments are the ones that will probably have a very good story to tell in the many years ahead. And another way to look at Singapore's capital markets would be its neutrality. A strong connector of the West and the East, located in the heart of Asia. This neutrality is actually valued by a lot of international investors which are hungry for China's growth. The growth opportunities that we see in Singapore are those that are able to take care not only of the growth in their investments, but also the growth in the safety aspect of their investments. So nowadays we see quite a bit of family offices, large institutional funds, sovereign funds planting their offices in Singapore. And that explains really clearly why us as a very neutral jurisdiction, we are able to offer that kind of security and also that kind of opportunities and options for our investors. And another way to look at our market is that we are definitely an up and coming one. SGX actually accumulates a lot of the wealth in the region via the capital markets. And we are able to develop our products very well, new products, to multiply that wealth for our investors, our stakeholders. So that will attract interest and trust to our market. And also the investments that we have to offer will bring a lot of variety to the market itself. So corporates benefit from being a member of this trusted and very well invested platform. And of course, we are very well positioned and in the young and fast growing Southeast Asian market. That brings a lot of connectivity to corporates and also investors. And they also see that the 600 million population that we see in Southeast Asia is what will bring them a lot of opportunity in terms of brand building, corporate development, and also financing opportunities.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, just touching on that point of being a global hub. Well, Stephen, we would love to know from you, because I think NIO, as a name, as a brand, it just represents so much vitality and excitement for people who are EV enthusiasts. So I think, coming to Singapore is a great move, and we would love to know, what is your take on Singapore being a global hub in the future of mobility?
Yeah, so I just said the first thought of ours is to behave in the best interest of our shareholders. Then have the second thought. We're very glad to find that Singapore is such a perfect global hub for innovation. So I think the first step, we would like to set up an R&D center for AI and AD in Singapore to support our global R&D. NIO is global in the past from day one, because we have the global R&D team. So in Singapore, we would also like start with R&D. But from last year, NIO has already entered the European market. So by and by, of course, we hope Singapore will be like a gateway for us to reach the 600 million people in Southeast Asia.
Absolutely. So what are the current trend developments of the smart EV market in both Singapore and globally for NIO?
If we look at the mega trends, I would say first, actually, sustainability is becoming more and more widely accepted concept. So for us, from day one, we stay true to the original wish of blue sky economy. So this company itself is based on sustainability. And that's why if you look at our technology, like the smart EV and also eventually in the future AD, we aim to shape a joyful lifestyle. That's the first point. The second point I would say, so that can be reflected by the rising EV penetration in China, in Europe, and also in US. And the more and more governments, no matter it's Chinese, European, or American, they endorse this idea. And also this idea is endorsed by more and more consumers. Of course, I would say for the mega trend, we need to talk about technology. With the rapid progress in the e-powertrain and also the smart hardware, a very good consensus is that after the consumers transition from ICE car to smart EV, they never come back. Right. It's like a one-way conversion.
Right.
So that very easily we will accumulate a higher and higher smart EV penetration. But actually, the third mega trend is that worldwide, more and more public institutions and also private companies, they help to build up the infrastructure. So this transition from fossil fuel to sustainable energy will cost a lot of money, a lot of capex, a lot of infrastructure construction. So I think this is a consensus for many people. And as the infrastructure expands, this transition will go on.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, Caihan, then how, with what Stephen said, how will this listing then benefit Singapore's vision for that green plan 2030? Because I think a good point that Stephen mentioned was that lifestyle element of Megatrend. You don't go back, right? So are Singaporeans adopting this for the green plan?
Okay. Firstly, I really need to thank NIO for believing in us, SGX. The listing today on SGX really has helped address some of the misconceptions of the Singapore market. And this listing has also proven that SGX continues to welcome quality Chinese corporates to list on SGX. And it also very well demonstrates the efficiency of our listing process and the very strong interest in the market by international investors. So that is very important to us. And NIO has actually done a very good job in setting this. I wouldn't say it's precedence. We have companies listed before that, but this has certainly brought a lot of attention back to us, the spotlight back to SGX again. So from there, we are seeing more corporates which have now set up and wondered whether they've missed anything about the Singapore capital markets and how they can be more active in it. Therefore, there are certainly more quality companies which are interested in an SGX listing, finding out more about the various ways to list. And as many people are aware, SGX has a whole spectrum of channels to reach out to the market, whether it's the IPO, whether it's the secondary listing that we see NIO doing it, whether it's a SPAC, a reverse takeover, or the direct listing framework, which is structured specifically for the China incorporated entities. So as for then what kind of benefits for the entire EV market, I think Singapore previously is probably not the natural listing venue which players in this sector will first think of. But from this listing and as the sector observes how NIO connects the dots between business development and financing resources that is available in the Singapore market, I believe they will see the real value of what the SGX team in China has continuously reiterated with regards to using SGX listing to grow and spread internationally. So I think that is very important message that a NIO listing has brought across. And it also reaffirms a lot of this value proposition that we have been telling the market and the market players that they should really pay attention to the up and coming SGX that probably they are familiar or not familiar with.
And touching on that, Stephen, what is long-term? What is that long-term competitive strength in the smart EV industry, especially for retail investors that are looking at investing?
Okay, so then back to the framework of the sustainability, technology, and also the infrastructure. Probably I need to add one atom here, that is the partners. Actually, for us, NIO, based on our original wish, this blue sky economy, and also the shape of joyful lifestyle mission. So actually, it's this mindset and philosophy turn out to be a very strong link between NIO and its users. Users, obviously, they love NIO. It's not only because that we offer super products, we offer nice services, but I would say also because so many users endorse this concept and also enjoy being part of this user community. So again, this premium of this branding comes from our value and our endorsement of the sustainability. But only good wish to be warm is not enough to justify such a premium pricing. So, actually, in the last 7 years, NIO has invested more than $4 billion in our R&D. Only this year, I think our R&D expenses can be as high as $1.5 billion, which is comparable to Tesla's R&D expenses in 2020. So that will translate to very many high-tech features like the AD technologies, the various of technologies, and also the extremely good user experience. So I think when investors look at this recent track, product competitiveness, and also their commitment in R&D and their capability to attract the world-class talents. No, in the end, this is industry of disrupt innovation. This is industry about who can get the cutting edge technology in the end. Okay. And third, I would say if you look at even Amazon or Jingdong, today's internet high tech companies, they need to be supported by infrastructure. Okay. So in China, we have already built more than 900 power substations. And also, actually, if you look at our sales network and after sales network, so when new user, when they buy one new car, actually it's not just the physical product, it's also the charging experience and the service infrastructure they will enjoy. That justify this brand premium. Last but not least, I would say the auto industry had a very long supply chain. Okay, so they're very happy to be supported with the world-class partners, including SGX, to help us in this disruptive innovation journey to accumulate more resources and leverage the best technology resources to offer the best products. And that's why in our heart, we truly believe in globalization, because this industry must be a global playground. We can only partner with the best players in each segment to offer the best products.
Thanks for sharing that, Stephen, and the analysis that you gave and the framework. I think the audience members are really engaged with that, and I look forward to hearing more from you on that. But just going back to SGX and going towards the Singapore position, I think from a macro perspective, there any thoughts about Singapore's position in the EV market as a whole? So we're looking at really at the global here.
So briefly, the EV is a very fast growing sector. That brings along with it many complementary sectors that we see along the value chain. And these sectors are really important contributors to an entrepreneurial community and also the global technology innovation and the overall economic development of Singapore. So, which is why we have been, I think, not only the exchange, but also in the broader sense, government agencies, the various local agencies, they have been very supportive of companies like NIO to come to Singapore to do a setup, and also to use Singapore more deeply on the various aspects, be it the R&D aspect of it, new technology development, or even trials of their new products. And now we see financing. So all this, when put together, it puts Singapore in a very important and critical position for the EV sector. And it really shows that Singapore is capable of cultivating new industry players, providing a stage for mature industry players to revolutionize and innovate. And also SGX, I think after this new listing, I think it shows more clearly that we do welcome quality EV companies, really with open arms to list with us. And also together we can embark on that journey of carbon reduction and ESG with us. Because Singapore itself, I think we have some Green Plan 2030. That is a very nationwide movement that we see in Singapore. And that really focuses on sustainable development. So when I say nationwide, it really means that no one, no institution should really shy away from playing a part in this. And really under this plan, there are some ambitious and concrete targets which Singapore has charted over the next 10 years. And also Singapore has strengthened its commitments under the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and also the Paris Agreement. So all these commitments actually put Singapore on a very clear path towards zero emissions. And therefore, that is the link between us and the EV sector. So this listing, in a sense, is very symbolic in that we are throwing our weight behind a corporate that advocates for clean energy, provides very strong support for leading China companies that are able to demonstrate its value very strongly in the sustainability sector. And that value has to be clearly presented to the international audience. So from SGX's point of view, we have also been very focused on sustainability, joining Singapore in its very strong commitment. We are the only Asian exchange that have set hard targets on emission reductions. And our CEO, Mr. Loh Boon Chye, also represents Singapore, represent SGX as the only global exchange on the board of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. So all these, when you put together, you see how us as an exchange, we are able to connect well with EV sector's value proposition in the longer run. That is to bring a better environment, cleaner environment for everybody, and through that whole journey, get people interested in the innovation of Asia.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I think this going global thing is coming up a lot in the Q&A at the moment. But I think what you mentioned was really important. It's about how Singapore has that edge over the other country listings. Do you have any further thoughts on that?
Okay, so Singapore, in terms of SGX, has all along been very focused on giving our listing potentials and even companies that have already listed with us, part of our bigger family, a very good experience. So in terms of what NIO has gone through in terms of secondary listing, we have a framework which brings a lot of clarity and convenience to potential investors. Our secondary listing framework has been streamlined to be friendlier towards companies that are already listed in developed jurisdictions, such as US, Hong Kong, London, Australia, where we adopt some form of mutual recognition of listing rules and avoid imposing additional compliance burden on the company on an ongoing basis. And second point, which probably I can bring up, is in terms of the efficiency of this entire process, it's really remarkable. I believe the companies that have dealt with us, and in this case, NIO in particular, it was a fantastic experience with very professional support from the company and from us. It's really taking on whatever that they have submitted and getting it ready for the market within the shortest period of time. So that kind of efficiency brings about a lot of certainty in time to market for companies, which I think whichever company that is considering a listing would truly appreciate. And then the third way of looking at this is Singapore capital markets. We have a sweet spot for companies in the market capitalization range of between 500 million to 5 billion Singapore dollars. Of course, anything above that will be very well favored, like what we see in NIO. That will be very well followed by the market, ample liquidity. However, this sweet spot range that I just mentioned, 500 million to 5 billion Sing dollars, it's probably what some other markets are not able to offer. Given that those markets, they'll be overloaded at a super large cap counters, and anything smaller than a super cap will be conveniently overlooked. So Singapore, in terms of liquidity, in terms of the attention that the market can give to a broader range of market capitalization, that is something that I believe makes us different from the other markets that we see currently. Our service to a company extends beyond today. For NIO, beyond the listing date, to post-market follow-up, and that can be done via research, corporate events, liquidity building opportunities. And in particular, we have market making schemes, market maker and active trader program, where we have added more than 40 of such players to contribute to our market. And this contribution we have seen doubling in the last 5 years. So all this will bring a lot of activity to our market. And of course, lastly, I think I shouldn't forget how we are able to support companies in their business development plans. SGX is not operating alone. towards servicing companies. We have very strong synergies alongside very supportive Singapore local government agencies, and that has enabled us to put together a very comprehensive Singapore package that covers business opportunities, operational efficiencies, and financing channels. And this will really help the company to truly develop holistically and build an international brand which can be accepted very well and invested very well by the international investment community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think the key word here is that international space, right? And here being springboard towards something a bit more global and be a part of that expansion plan. Now, Stephen, what are your plans post Singapore IPO?
For our business in Singapore? Okay, yeah, then back to EV. Actually, first, we always talk about smart EV. So EV is not only about e-powertrain, but also about AD and AI. And also for the auto industry, it has very non-supply chain and value-added chain. It's not only about the manufacturing, but also from R&D to the operation. So for us, as I said before, we found that Singapore is a global hub for innovation. It has world-class research institutions. If you look at the ranking of Nanyang Technology University and the National University of Singapore, obviously they rank 11th and 12th in the global university ranking, and first and second in Asia. And then if you look at the talent pool, a lot of world-class talents, especially in the AI and AD, they enjoy working and living in Singapore. Last but not least, Singapore government give a lot of subsidies and incentives for global companies to set up the R&D center in Singapore. So again, first step, we would like to start with R&D. And then actually smart EV, a very important feature in smart EV is AD, autonomous driving. Probably you don't know, according to a report issued by KPMG in 2020, Singapore ranked number 1st in AD readiness worldwide. So that's why actually so many tech companies set up the R&D center in Singapore, and also Singapore government is so supportive in AD research. So for us, after we listed today in SGX, then we will continue to work on setting up the R&D center, attracting the best talents, and also collaborate with the world-class research institutions in Singapore. Yeah, and then back to the Singapore EV market. On one hand, we have seen the determination by the Singapore government to go green. So in 2020, in 2035, probably all of the cars in Singapore will be electrified. So clearly this is a good market. Every year, more or less 70,000 units. And most of them, the premium, thanks to the strong purchasing power, the premium market accounts a very good portion of the Singapore auto market. But again, I would say smart EV is not only about EV, but also smart. You know, for every smart EV, it has to have the connectivity. So we need to set up the data center. We need to offer the operation support to our users, not only in Singapore, but also potentially in the future in ASEAN or in Europe and United States. So at the global hub for innovation, besides the first step, we have not in our mind. It depends on the further execution.
So we're talking about software and hardware components, right? In Singapore, you touched on that talent base, that strong network that we have here. But I think a lot of people in the discussions at the moment, they're wondering, you know, in terms of the government incentives right? How does NIO, what's NIO's analysis of going forward with the high COE price here?
You know, I would say when we talk about the government incentive, today we're more interested about the incentive to set up an R&D center. Because anyway, we have determined we will set up the R&D center in Singapore. And it is well known that Singapore government is very active and generous to promote this kind of R&D activities in Singapore. But of course, I think the second question is Singapore ranked number 1 in AD readiness. Singapore has such a good hardware. I would say if AD cannot be deployed in Singapore, it will be very hard for us to imagine some other cities. But how to combine NIO's know-how and our technology in AD with Singapore's unique hardware and infrastructure? That's a big question we need to find out in the future.
Looking forward to it. Well, for both of you, I'm going to open the floor right now to a discussion. So, great points brought up today. And I think something I learned as well is really looking not just at EV, but looking at smart EVs and mobility, the future of mobility. And that applies for pretty much everything. It's lifestyle, it's hardware, it's software, it's finding the marriage between all of the elements, right? Do you have any further thoughts on this and for retail investors that are looking at trends in mobility in Singapore? Maybe we can start with Stephen.
Okay, I would say globally, especially for the Gen Z and millennials, they prefer to have more flexibility when they talk about their relationship with their cars. I would say in the past, people have paid too much attention to cars. But nowadays, the auto industry should think about how to offer more flexible and worry-free product and services to serve this flexible and worry-free demand from the young consumers. Singapore, I think, it's quite unique. It's very young, very dynamic, very international, and very friendly to AD. So again, I said, in the future, we would like to explore the possibilities to offer more flexible mobility service to our users in Singapore. But of course, as you have mentioned, COE probably can be a problem.
Right. Absolutely. What about Caihan? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Probably from a capital market perspective, NIO is the first company that we welcome on our platform. Certainly, we hope it's not the last. But for now, I really would urge investors to place their support behind NIO in Singapore, help to realize its true value as a leading premium smart EV company via the very conducive trading environment that SGX has to offer. SGX has a lot of experience building sector strengths up and down the value chain. We have done that for the real estate sector. We have also done that for the maritime and offshore sector. We'll continue to mine suitable companies in the upstream and downstream of the EV market. We also identify their business value proposition in the Southeast Asia and the broader international market. And through understanding them, we'll roll out financing channels for them to help them deliver on these international plans. So investors in our market, I think they'll be able to prove that our market has that hunger for such targets. And we have all it takes to bring reasonable valuations to the innovations that we see in the EV sector.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for the discussion today. I think we learned a lot from your analysis and the audience is asking their questions already. So I think it's time for us to transition into the live Q&A. But Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that we're giving away NIO shares. So we've got 9 shares to give away, and the top 3 users who give the correct answer to each question will receive their shares. Now, before we begin, the first question for our experts today. So I'm just going to throw it out to you. We're going to give away the first question already. You've got to answer with the right answer, but also the fastest fingers first. All right. So whenever you're ready. The first question: what is the ticker of NIO listing on SGX? Type in your answer. Excellent. Wow. So much interaction in the chat. You guys are fast. Amazing. All right. Okay, so the first 3 users, you have won, and our team will contact you after this, right? Great. So to the Q&A, to our experts, this question is for Stephen. So looking at Singapore's talent pool, how promising really is, that whole buying of cars or owning a smart EV, even as a young investor, a young consumer?
You mean Singapore, right?
Singapore.
I think Singapore, they to own a smart EV, as far as I understand, the first hurdle or step is to have a COE. So that out of control, our control. But then after you have this COE, of course, then banned by more and more smart EV brands will land in Singapore market. Actually, internally, we also evaluate the timing and opportunity of entering Singapore market. So for this user on the internet, what I can answer is probably you still need to wait some time until we can offer you a new product in Singapore.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I think the next question is open for the both of you. They are wondering, in terms of, the next 10 years, the next 5 to 10 years. So they're looking at a time horizon question. How is NIO having that edge over the other possible companies that would list on the SGX?
Probably I go first.
Yeah.
NIO has a very strong brand. This brand, as I have articulated earlier, it comes with its own natural following of investors. And this will bring a lot of attention to the market, not only in terms of the capital markets, but also in the EV market sector, which then will result in this investors or market players becoming more educated on this sector and not only buy into the products, but also buy into financing instruments that are related to this particular sector. So to give an example, on SGX, we do have EV-related ETFs that came before a new listing. And I sincerely do hope that after today's listing, there will be more people that pay attention to this particular sector. And from there, they look at what other instruments are available, which can get them exposed to this very fast developing sector. So this is how things will pan out in the financial market, where you use a particular industry or even a particular brand or company to bring interest, and that interest is extrapolated into other parts of the financial markets.
Okay, then it's my turn. So first, I think NIO is the first smart EV OEM to land on SGX, right?
Yes.
So then that means for our user, probably not today, you don't have other choices, right? It's SGX. NIO is the only choice for you. if you want to put your money in smart EV. But I would say for us, actually, smart EV is a global playground of disruptive innovation. We need to compete with Tesla, BMW, or eventually perhaps Apple. Then for in this playground, again, I think first technology and branding are very important. So that's why if you look at our R&D expenses and our ASP, average selling price, and also our product pipeline, obviously probably such, and also sales volume, such very quantitative indicators can give you a better quantitative evaluation of who will excel in this global competition racetrack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think touching on that point, because we've got a next question from an audience member, he would love to know that other EV players as well, the COE is so high, there's sort of a limitation there, but what could NIO do to enter this, to address that gap? And they would like to know what else does NIO sell in terms of why investors should be in this space.
You mean the SOE is very high? SOE means?
So for the COE.
COE, right. Okay, yeah, that's a very specific question for Singapore. It's so rich, but it is so densely populated. Yeah, obviously that's why today we only set up the R&D center instead of our new house. Obviously, in the end, we need to find a good compromise between the public, personal demand, and also the technology. We clearly understand that thanks to the dense population density, Singapore is unable to host too many cars. So hopefully, one day, NIO's cars with AD capabilities will, on one hand, improve the capacity of the Singapore traffic system because it is more smart, it's smarter. So it with the same infrastructure, Singapore traffic system can hold more car. So then the COE, the price of COE hopefully can become lower, and the Singapore consumers can have more choices to own a car. That's one point. And then the second point is, of course, actually we need to find more innovative business models to accommodate the Singapore users' demand. Probably they don't need to own a car, but they can still have the possibility to use a car. So usage instead of ownership may be an answer for this rich but very densely populated country.
Great point. Do you have anything to add, Caihan?
So based on my understanding of NIO, and probably let me see how I can try to link it to Singapore. NIO is a premium car brand. I think when we view a premium brand, a premium car brand, it should be no different from how we view normal premium car brands. And well, COE may be a factor that a buyer of a car needs to consider. But then if you really value the premium aspect of this particular brand, and if there is a chance for fellow Singaporeans to really have a try at that car, I can tell you that it's worth that price. The technology behind it, it's amazing. And therefore, when we have a brand like that is able to set a very high bar for whichever other players that come into the market. I think it improves the average level of how we view EV sector in particular, and how we are able to better appreciate disruptive technologies, which then will come in different forms. It may not be in the EV sector, but many other high-end manufacturing sectors that we will be bringing into our capital markets.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm going to stop this Q&A right here, and I'm going to ask the second question for the giveaway. So again, for the audience, we've got 3 questions that we're asking to you with 9 stops. So we've already given the first 3 away, and now is the second one. If you want to stay for the last question, you've got to stay until the end of the Q&A. So for the second question, are you ready? It's a yes or no question. So type in yes or no to this question. Is NIO the first auto company in the world to be listed on 3 exchanges? Yes or no? I'll repeat it one more time. Is NIO the first auto company in the world to be listed on 3 exchanges? Yes or no? Amazing. Great. Thank you, everyone. Everyone's just typing like, I want this. Okay, great. So our team will contact you after the live webinar. All right. So back to Stephen. So you mentioned, the other competitors, right? Previously, there's a question about what about luxury EV? Is there any developments in this space, and what are your thoughts on it?
I think first, the EV penetration will start from the premium segment, because if you look at the BOM cost, the smart hardware, and also the lithium battery, clearly the premium auto market is able to absorb this higher BOM cost. Second, I would say long-term, the market concentration, the premium segment will be probably even higher.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say my understanding is the market concentration is related to the R&D expenses. This is a very expensive industry from R&D perspective. We need to put a lot of R&D expenses on AI, on AD, on battery, on e-powertrain, and also the vehicle engineering. So in the end, for the premium segment, the consumers, they're very critical. If you save any money in R&D or in the BOM cost, they can tell you very soon. So, right. But of course, for NIO, after we develop the technology to serve the premium market, we have the flexibility to expand to more mass market.
Mm-hmm. Right. We've got a question as well for Stephen. As an investor, I want to see my ROE. So R&D is important. However, I would like you to address how my investment can give me my returns. Where are the potential markets? And also what kind of globalization strategy will follow after Singapore?
You mean the profitability, right? ROE?
Yeah. So I think the question is really zoning down to ROE and profits.
Yeah, I think first, we understand nowadays is a very quick time window for this disruptive innovation. So if you look at Tesla's financial statement, in Q1, its GP margin is already as high as 32%, and its net profit is already about $3.3 billion US. So the read-through for us is that in our industry, the net profit will naturally come after you reach a certain threshold for economy of scale. Okay. So for us, I think first point is probably for the next 1-2 years, like what Tesla has done in 2020 or 2019, we will first reach the break-even point. And after that, we believe with economy of scale and of our competitive product, we're able to raise our GP margin continuously. And at the same time, thanks to the branding and also user community, the SG&A expense ratio will continue to decline. So that's why we call this recent track a disruptive innovation. It's very volatile, it's very dynamic, and it's like adventure. For me, obviously it's hard for me to answer when the ROE can reach 20 or 30%. But I truly believe with so many moving parts and with such a strong dynamics, not far in the future, you can understand that NIO can prove that our business model and our product companies will be appreciated by our users with a decent GP margin and a decent OP margin.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much, Stephen, for that. Well, next question is cause and effect. So I think it's on everyone's minds, right? Market volatility. So I would love to know from both of you, what are your thoughts on this and the investor that is looking at putting their money in this space during this time?
Probably I start first. In terms of market volatility, I think it's something that we see generally across the markets globally now. But this volatility, it also brings opportunities to investors, because I think it has been for a period of time where investors have probably not that good sense of a direction on where the markets have been moving. And this is expected to continue, of course, this market volatility. But as things settle down, especially in terms of the overall COVID situation, in terms of the markets opening up, in terms of some of this recovery of technologies and returning of companies back into the Asian market, we will see that probably the Asian markets are going to outshine some of the other international markets that we are seeing. And also with some of these technologies rooting themselves here in the Asian market, this is expected to bring in more of the opportunities due to the past volatility that we see. As things stabilizes and it goes on the upward trend, that's when investors are able to find investment opportunities that they probably haven't seen in the last 12 to 18 months.
Okay. What would you say NIO's strategies or plans and insights during this market volatility stage?
Okay, so first, this from the macroeconomy to the capital market, such a volatility is painful routine lessons for the investors that's inherent in the capital market and also this capitalism. I think we can do nothing to change that. But we're only lucky that we have already accumulated the initial momentum with such a strong economy of scale, such a volume. So I can imagine, especially back to the previous questions, probably for the latecomers in such a harsh market environment, it will be much more difficult to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
But then back to our own strategy, actually we pay more attention to the technology transition instead of the capital market volatilities. For us, the billion-dollar question is, can we catch the coming time window to offer the right product and technology? If we cannot do that, no matter how good or bad the capital market is, we will settle down in the dust in the end. But if you look at Amazon or Microsoft, look at their performance after the 2000 bubble bust. Such tech companies, they still generate very good yield for the investors. And that's what we want to achieve after this painful volatility.
Thank you for sharing that for the both of you. Next question is on more units of production. So we've got a question about battery systems. So what are your thoughts, Stephen, on the battery side of the industry, and how is NIO, and what sort of range and vehicles do you have to help base? And I think zoning it down to investments, right? So coming to Singapore and sort of figuring out what is the dominant factor in the EV industry here.
So we focus on the battery system. First, battery, the technology itself makes rapid progress. So if you look at the power density every year, it makes progress. But then recently, the raw material, from lithium to nickel to cobalt, we have seen some price volatility. Okay, so then for us, again, we need to spend on one hand the technology to increase the power density, and on the other hand, we need to try to somehow make a good control of our expense, the cost. Otherwise, then it will be very volatile. But then back to the long-term strategy in our mind, we truly believe that the success of the battery system is to decouple the battery from the vehicle. Because if you look at the technology progress and also the lifetime, clearly, if we can decouple the battery, then the users will have more flexibility. And from the environment perspective, it will be more friendly to recycle the batteries. So I would say that in the end, I would say we believe if our strategy, long-term thinking is right, then time is our friend in this long journey.
And you mentioned just now in an open discussion as well, Singapore is a hub, right, with that expertise, that intelligent global talent that will be able to support this, right, as you would say?
I would say for Singapore, it has more talent pool in AI and AD than in the batteries.
Right. So yes, I think we can look at what sort of developments we'll have upcoming, and I'm really excited for a key question, and a lot of the discussions are centering around is, someone said the focus should be on technology rather than just the market volatility, and this is fundamentally important for a company that is going to stay long. And I think that is pretty much sums up what we were going at, going into the DNA and what NIO does and that future outlook. So thank you so much for that analysis. But I think with all the questions, there's so many questions, and I'm really happy that the audience is very engaged with this. We've got time for about 2 more questions before we wrap up with our final giveaway. But I think this is a key question as well. NIO, like most EV manufacturers, they suffered perhaps even from the recent COVID shutdown in China. So Stephen, how is this listing in Singapore able to avoid such future risk in this space?
For lockdown or for the disruptions, I would say first for us, what's the impact? What's the COVID impact on us? On one hand, of course, it has some impact on the supply chain. But actually, our production capacity or output has already recovered to the beginning of March. So it's a very short term. If we think this is a long journey of disrupt innovation, such as 1 month or 2 months disruptions, you can find everywhere in the global auto industry. It can be a tsunami, it can be an earthquake, it can be a war. So for us, supply chain disruptions, that's our daily routine lessons, need to homework. For the demand side, I think, again, very short-term disruptions. For Singapore, then I don't think I'm in the position to answer this question for Singapore. Probably Caihan is more right person to answer this question for Singapore.
Yeah, so Caihan, just to repeat the question, how is this listing in Singapore avoid such future risk, for example, with the shutdowns in China or even the post-COVID effects?
So being a very international market, we have all along been very supportive of companies that come here to manage their risks, especially via the many products that we have. And in particular for China, I think what I've been seeing on the ground is that with the current lockdowns and then impact on supply chains, there are companies that have, especially those that have already positioned themselves in many different places around the world, they are benefiting from being dispersed in some sense, such that if they do have any impact on the supply chains in a particular area, they are able to pick up whatever that they are not able to deliver in that market and establish that in a new market. And from there, they can continue to grow their supplies and engagement with their consumers. So for NIO's case, I would really hope that the company would really make use of this platform to see how they can, probably in terms of setting up production lines and some of this, we are probably not there yet. But in terms of getting the innovation ongoing, do not stop at whatever that we are at now. Let Singapore's resources, Singapore's talents continue to support the company in the growth plans that it has. And of course, through the listing in Singapore, whatever resources they need, especially in terms of financing, Singapore market is able to support. And we have the capability in terms of the depth of our investor market, in terms of the kind of institution investors that we're able to attract to support this company, NIO, for a much longer period of time.
Last question from the audience member. They would just like to know, is it a possibility in the future that you might just focus on Singapore alone for Southeast Asia and delist in other countries?
The short answer is no, because as we said before, NIO is a global startup. I think to be listed in multiple stock exchange offers us more liquidity and also more reach out to more investors. So
that international disruptive component that we were really talking about for this entire webinar. And thank you so much as well, Caihan, for your insights on the Singapore Exchange. Now, before we go to final thoughts, I would like to ask the last question for the giveaway of our last 3 shares for NIO. So get ready, because it's also a yes or no question. So you got to be really fast with that. So get ready. Are the shares listed on SGX fully fungible with the ADS listed on the NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange? Yes or no? Great. So the first 3 correct answers, you guys have received your NIO shares. Our team will contact you after this. So I would like to thank Stephen and Caihan for joining us today for our live session. And thank you so much for your insight. But I think before we go, any final thoughts for our audience out there?
Yeah, I think for us, this is just day 1 for us to be deeply engaged with Singapore. We expect and look forward to more exposure and more footprint in Singapore. I cannot wait to fly to Singapore.
Can't wait to welcome you here. What about you, Caihan?
Um, Again, congratulations to NIO for the listing, very successful listing here today. And we really hope to see NIO not only performing well in the capital markets, but also we look forward to seeing your products very soon on the roads of Singapore. On the roads of Singapore.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you, Caihan.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Out there, it was a pleasure having you on our live session. We were talking about going global in the smart EV market with NIO's SGX listing. So if you'd like to read more and have more resources on how you can do this on the Moomoo Trading app, head over to our resources and our social media for more live sessions like this. Remember, we are here to be the bridge to the experts and analysis on key industries, and we are really on it to be able to share the tools and resources to help you make better investment decisions. We'll see you for the next webinar. Bye.
Bye.
Hello Singapore.
Hello Singapore.
你好新加坡. 안녕하세요 Singapore.
你好新加坡.
你好新加坡.
Hello Singapore.
Hello Singapore.
Hello Singapore.